Welcome back to the Never-Ending 240 project. Here's our goals for this episode. I'm going to take all the remaining parts I need off the teal chassis. That's mostly just interior pieces, but there's also some stuff like the rear crash bar and the hatch and some remaining accessory parts in the engine bay. And then we're going to get this teal chassis out of here. I've already got a few people who are interested in taking it off my hands, and I want to get it out of this driveway by the time the snow falls, which, given that this is Canada, it could be tomorrow or it could be 2 months from now. I don't know how much time I have. Now, the main hurdle with swapping all this interior stuff from the teal car to the red car is that the very first thing that needs to go into the red car is the wiring harness, and that is the very last thing that can come out of the teal car. So basically this has to be done in a last out, first in kind of order, which just means that I can't pull a part out of the teal car and just bolt it straight into the red car. I have to pile all these parts up somewhere and then remember where they go and what hardware is needed to fasten them, and then I have to put it all in reverse order later. But that's not that big of a deal. I think compared to swapping engines and subframes around, I think the interior should be a relatively easy process. Like a lot of jobs, the first order of business here is preparation, and to prepare the red chassis, I need to clean it out. There's so much crap in here, ranging from old rags to pine needles to a million miscellaneous nuts and bolts. So before I can worry about swapping interior parts, I'm going to give this thing a good clean and vacuum. I'm sure this should make for a very interesting video.
Go ahead. I don't know.
Alright, that's not bad. If I felt I had more time, I probably would have gone and replaced all this factory sound deadening with like something like Dynamat, but I don't feel like I have time for that, not before winter comes. That is something that can be done at a later date. It would just be more convenient to do it now. This is the sheer amount of assorted nuts and bolts I pulled out of this car while cleaning it. It's got to be a solid 2 kilograms, so those will come in handy. Now I'm going to start pulling the first interior parts out of the teal car. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this miscellaneous crap that I had pulled off while I was dropping the engine, specifically center console, dash bezel, and the shifter boot. And my ECU, for some reason. Alright, next I'm going to pull the seats, just because they're going to make it harder for me to pull everything else out of this car. It's really fun to be able to do automotive archaeology on your own car, because this is one of the bolts I found holding in the seat. And I don't know if you recognize this red color, but this bolt originally came from my hard body. I held on to all the spare bolts from the bed that I took off, and then one of them ended up in the teal car, and now it's going to end up in the red car. So the shitty hard body lives on. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do here is get rid of the dash. To do that, I need to get rid of the steering wheel, the trim around the column, cluster, trim around the cluster, the head unit, and I think that's about it. And then I can pull the dash out. And once I have the dash out, I think I can at least get the engine harness transferred to the red car. But obviously the chassis harness is going to have to wait until I've gotten the carpet and all this other crap out.
That's a rat's nest.
Alright, I'm going to take a quick break from doing all that stuff at the front of the car to remove all this trim around the rear windows, because I've actually got a glass guy coming tomorrow to take these quarter windows out and put them in the red car. That was easier than it looked. Alright, we're back at it. For me it's been about a week, for you it's been about 2 seconds. So I had the glass guy come and take the windows out of the teal car and put them in the red car. I'm happy with it, he did a great job, but ultimately I spent a lot of money getting windows removed and installed from these two cars for literally no reason. In retrospect, it was a huge mistake to ever take the windows out of this car in the first place, and that's a lesson learned. Now that those windows are taken care of, I'm going to keep going with the front area here. You can see I've still got the dash support bar, all that wiring, all the HVAC stuff that's got to get taken out of here. First thing I'm going to do here is get as much of this wiring out of the way as possible. It's getting chilly outside. Winter's definitely on its way, and I need this car gone by then because I don't want to work on it outside in the winter time. Okay, with all that wiring out of the way, now I'm going to try to get this dash support bar out. Alright, that's pretty much all the dash stuff out of there. Dashboard, radio, climate control, all the HVAC stuff, that dash support bar. I don't need to take the steering column out. So pretty much the only thing left on that front firewall I need is the pedals, which aren't my highest priority right now. Once I got all that stuff out, I was able to get the engine wiring harness free. So as you can see, it's no longer dangling down there getting rained on, only that power cable is. It's not a big deal. Once I got the engine wiring harness out, I just kind of lazily put it roughly where it's going to need to go. And it'll probably sit like this for months because wiring up the engine is not a high priority right now at all. What is a high priority is getting the rest of the wiring out, so I still need to take the entire chassis harness out, and we're kind of close to being able to do that, but I still need to take out like the carpet and the roof liner before I can get all that wiring free. But that's my next highest priority. But for now, it just started raining, and I don't really feel like working in the rain, so I'm going to go play Elite Dangerous, and I will see you on a nicer day. finally got the forward body harness out of the teal car after months of it just kind of dangling free, so that's great. I jammed the part that goes into the cab, but the rest of it is currently just laying on the floor. It's going to take me a long time to properly route that around the engine bay, and it doesn't need to be done right now. The next thing I'm going to do is get the rearward part of the body harness out of the teal car, and same thing, get it at least laying in this car, even if it's not routed properly. Alright, that is the entire chassis harness ripped out of the teal car and lazily plopped inside of the red car. And that is such a weight off my shoulders. The reason it's such a big deal is because that is the last major thing that I needed to get out of the teal car. If the teal car got hit by an asteroid yesterday, I would have been completely screwed because, you know, where the hell do you get an entire chassis harness for an S13? You don't. But now, if this thing got hit by an asteroid, I could more or less replace everything I lose. There's still some stuff in there I need. There's the taillights, the rear bumper, the door cards, the hatch, the weather stripping around the doors. But none of that stuff is even 1% as important as the wiring harness. So I'm really psyched to have that done. We're really close to having everything we need out of the teal car here. I'm just gonna blitz it, grab the last, 10 or so things I need, and then hopefully someone will come drag this thing away on a flatbed. So I just pulled out the taillights and the rear fascia from the teal car, and I installed it on the red car. Realistically, there's no point in me installing stuff like this on the red car right now, because it's all going to have to get removed again when I paint this car. But it's probably going to be a while before I'm actually able to paint this car, and for now, it's easiest to keep track of stuff if I put them where they're supposed to go. This just means that, next summer or whatever, when it's painting time, I'm going to have to retrace some of my steps, but it's not that big of a deal. This does also give us a good opportunity to preview the horrific color clash between the red parts and the teal parts that's going to exist until I can get a paint job done. Okay, I've now pulled every single part I need off the teal chassis, and this is the series wrap for this car. The next time you see it, it's going to be getting loaded onto a flatbed on its way to its next life. I'm not scrapping this chassis, I'm selling it, because somebody will find a use for it. You know, if this was most other cars, it would be going to a scrapyard right now, but this isn't any car. This is an S chassis, which means even in this condition, the universe is far from done with this car. I'm sure by this time next year, you know, it'll be turning up at drift events just because that's what S chassis do. They're like cockroaches. They survive, and this one was the cockroach of cockroaches. When I bought this car 3 years ago, it realistically should have been going to a scrapyard. It was rusty, didn't run right. You know, it was 11 different colors. It was the worst S chassis realistically I could have ever bought. I had saved up enough money to buy a good S chassis at the time, and then instead of doing that, I got impatient and I used about 1/3 of that money to buy a bad S chassis. So I, to this day, don't know why I did that, but I don't care anymore. You know, it's 3 years later. I got 3 good years out of this chassis. I've never owned a vehicle for longer than this. I've owned 30 vehicles, give or take, and this is the longest tenured vehicle ever for me. And it is kind of a bummer to be getting rid of it after I've put so much time and money and energy into it. But on the other hand, I don't look at it as I'm getting rid of a car. I look at it as I am getting rid of a car part, because the car is over here. In my brain, this is the same car. It's built of 99% the same parts. It just so happens that the one part that is now different is bigger than the other parts. So even though it's got a different VIN and it's a different color and it physically has a different chassis, this is where so much of that time and money and energy is ending up. So that's how I'm choosing to think about it. I'm not getting rid of this 240 in favor of this 240. It's the same 240, I just changed the part. And obviously that's like a classic philosophical question of, if you change every single part in a car, is it the same car? And I choose to believe that, yeah, it is the same car. And now for the 3rd winter in a row, I'm preparing to sequester myself in my garage all winter, putting an ungodly amount of time and money into this friggin' car for some fucking reason, because my brain doesn't work correctly. So stay tuned for that. You know, this project is honestly just getting started. Like, taking apart the car was the easy part. Now I have to put it back together, which is not the easy part. So stay tuned. I'm going to have updates on this car coming out at my regular, completely random intervals for probably the whole winter, probably into next summer. I've also got some other stuff in the works, so stay tuned for that as well. If you wanted to subscribe, you'd be doing me a huge favor. If you don't want to subscribe, I completely understand why. But yeah, I'll see you next time.
Yeah, do something.